Okay, cool. We are live, so hope you guys are having a great day so far. So I wanted to record this video to come on here and talk about this past vacation. So if you weren't aware, my wife and I, we went on vacation last week. We went to Hilton Head. It was a really fun time. We took our 5-month-old son, who is actually getting close to being 6 months old now, which is really crazy. But we took him, we took the dog, and we stayed a week at Hilton Head. We had an Airbnb that we stayed at, and we had a ton of fun. It was really, really nice. Still did a little bit of work, but tried to unplug from my phone as much as possible. Also, obviously, didn't go live in here last week since I was on vacation. But one thing I wanted to talk about was how I approached this vacation and how I was able to go throughout the whole 7 days, the whole trip, while having dessert every single day, while having alcohol actually every single day, and while not tracking my food and eating out every single day. I was able to do all of those things. Also, I did not lift weights. I did not do my normal exercise routine while I was there either, but I came back the exact same weight. I didn't gain any weight on that whole entire trip. And I wanted to talk about this and how I did this, and how, if you're thinking about, if you're going on a trip soon, or you're always trying to navigate how to stay on track while you're on vacation. And if every single time you go on vacation, you come back and you're, multiple pounds heavier and always feeling sluggish, always feeling like you completely undid all of your progress, this is going to be really helpful for you, to give you some things that you can do when you go on your next trip to just maintain your weight and maybe even possibly lose weight. I'm not a big fan of trying to actively lose weight on vacation because I like to have more flexibility and actually just enjoy the food and time a little bit more with whoever I'm going on that trip with. But if you implement these things and just implement them with a little bit more intensity, I guess, you probably could still actually lose weight and lose fat while on vacation. But I wanted to go over, there's 5 main things that I really did over these 7 days that really helped me, like I said, maintain my weight completely over that whole entire time period. So number 1 is I got some kind of movement in daily. So I mentioned I didn't work out at all. Normally I lift weights, do my normal workouts 5 days a week. I did not work out at all this entire trip. I took the entire trip off from my workouts. And I know a lot of people get super stressed about this because they think, they're going to burn way less calories. They're going to gain a bunch of weight back. Also feel like they're going to lose a bunch of muscle, which you're not going to lose a significant amount of muscle in just a week. But I like to, if I go on vacation, because I'm so consistent when I'm not on vacation, I really never miss a workout. If I do, it's very rare. Because I'm so consistent on those other weeks and days, I like to, when I go on vacation, just not work out. So did not work out at all, but I still got in some kind of movement every day, and what that movement looked like for us on this trip was walking. So we were staying at an Airbnb. It was probably around a 10, maybe up to 15-minute walk from the beach. So nearly every day we took some kind of walk to the beach. I think maybe 5 out of the 7 days we ended up walking to the beach, and then walking along the beach for most of those days, probably 2 or 3 of those 5 days we actually took a longer walk along the beach. I didn't actually track my steps. I was going to, but I brought my Oura Ring, which you can kind of see maybe I'm wearing now. I forgot my charger, so I wasn't able to charge it. So I wasn't able to actually keep track of my steps. But every single day I was getting in probably at minimum a 30-minute walk to and from the beach. But then also, as we were walking along the beach, maybe add on 10 to 15 minutes of walking along the beach there. So every day I was getting into either a 30 to 45 minute walk in per day, which probably, if I would have add up those steps strictly from that walk, probably 1,000 steps ish per every roughly 10 minutes. So maybe around 4 to 5,000 steps per day from those walks. And that's not counting steps I would get from just normal walking around the Airbnb, walking to the pool that was pretty close, and walking to dinner, walking around shops and things that we did too. So I think one thing that really helped me maintain my weight during this period was just the light movement. People severely underestimate how much of an impact getting steps in or walking can make when it comes to maintaining their weight, or even just weight loss in general too. It can be the big difference between you losing weight, gaining weight, or maintaining your weight, depending on what your nutrition looks like. And it can make even a bigger difference than your actual exercise. Like, this is something like a conversation I have with clients a lot is if we're stalled with fat loss or weight loss, and we want to increase activity and we're already getting in maybe 4 to 5 regular workouts in per week, instead of increasing like cardio and maybe saying, hey, let's add 2 or 3 cardio sessions in, I like to lean on adding in maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand extra steps in to your day instead. Because if we add in 2 or 3 cardio sessions, let's say to burn some extra calories, you're only burning extra calories on those 2 to 3 days. Versus if you add in 1,000 to 2,000 extra steps, you're actually burning more calories every single day then. And plus the extra calories you are burning from that extra walking, those extra steps, are very low intensity. They don't fatigue the body as much, so it's not as hard to recover from. You're not elevating your body's stress as much, but you're still getting in that extra movement and burning more calories that way. So just a little like insight on calories, like increasing steps versus adding in cardio when it comes to breaking out of weight loss plateaus. But one thing that I think really helped me maintain my weight during this time period was just some kind of daily movement. And you can do this yourself. Like every vacation you have, you likely have the opportunity to walk. You don't need any equipment for. You don't need anything special. You don't necessarily need a treadmill. You don't even need like an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring to track your steps, right? Like I didn't have mine. Mine wasn't charged the whole time, but I still got in like a 30 to 45 minute walk at minimum each day. If I added in the time spent walking at shops and stuff, it's probably even a little bit more. But just doing that can add in add some extra calorie burn to your day, so you're more likely to maintain your weight when you're on vacation. So that's one thing that helped a ton. Probably was getting maybe not quite 10,000, but probably around 8,000-ish per day, which makes a big difference versus if I were to just like lay around, not walk at all, and only get in 2,000. So you can get these steps in like first thing in the morning, right when you wake up. Go on a short walk, and then some kind of other walk in the afternoon can help out a lot too. And I think it also helps if you're going on vacation someplace with a beach, like what better place to walk than to walk on the beach. Super peaceful, super relaxing. Hear the sounds of the ocean, get some fresh air, especially if the weather is nice and sunny. You get that sun, that extra vitamin D too. So daily movement, number 1, super important. Number 2 thing that I did that helped me maintain my weight while I was on vacation is I kept breakfast and lunch light. And I tried to keep my snacks very minimal. So I think one of the biggest ways people can kind of maybe sabotage their vacation, I guess, when it comes to weight loss and gain weight on vacation is because they're constantly eating every minute or every hour of the day. Try to keep your like eating periods or eating windows very like structured. Like, okay, you wake up, you have a nice balanced breakfast. You then, a few hours later, you have a nice balanced light lunch. And then a few hours later, you have your dinner. Like keep it to just those 3 meals and try to keep snacks as minimal as possible. And it's not to say that I didn't have any snacks on vacation, because I absolutely did here and there. But I tried to keep most of my calories and most of my food in that 3 meal window. That way in my mind, it's just easier to be conscious of exactly like how much I'm eating. And then another thing I did with this breakfast and lunch is I kept them lighter. So I knew that we were going to go out to dinner every single night. That's how we did it. We had the Airbnb and we had a plan, breakfast and lunch. We were going to, we went grocery shopping before we actually settled in officially. So we went grocery shopping, got a bunch of groceries, and we planned that breakfast and lunch we were going to eat from the grocery items that we bought. And then dinner was when we were going to actually go out to dinner and eat at a restaurant, sit down and have a little bit bigger of a meal. So because I had that rough kind of guideline in my head of, okay, dinner is going to be a little bit heavier or a little bit higher in calorie, I'm going to make breakfast and lunch lighter. So I planned to have those lighter in my head, planned to have minimal snacks, and then it gave me that higher flexibility with my dinner to enjoy myself more without going over my total calorie allotment for the day. So that was another strategy, is keeping your breakfast and your lunch light, and then keeping your dinner, like having the flexibility for dinner, because that's most likely when you're probably going to have a big family dinner. If you're going with your family, everyone's going to be eating together. You're going to probably order dessert, appetizers, and things. So that meal is probably going to be your biggest. So keeping your other meals, your previous ones throughout the day, a little bit lighter helps. So that's point number 2, is I kept breakfast and lunch lighter. And that way I had more flexibility for dinner. So point number 3 then is I was conscious of calories, but I did not track them. So this is super important. So I went on this trip and I wasn't going to really give myself any restrictions. I wanted to enjoy myself. I wanted to enjoy all the food that I wanted. But I also wanted to feel good too. So I didn't want to just like completely binge on everything and then feel like crap the entire trip either. But I gave myself that flexibility of really enjoying myself. But with that, in order to still feel good each day and not feel like I'm overdoing it, I was conscious of my calories. So from my previous experience with tracking my food, tracking how my body responds to eating a certain amount of food, and this is something that our clients learn really well too, especially clients that have been with us for a long period of time. We really learn how their body responds to a certain calorie number. So if they're consistently eating 2,000 calories per day, we know how their body's going to react to that. If they're consistently eating 2,500 calories a day, we know how their body reacts to that. If they're eating 1,500, we know how their body will react to that. So that's something we learn with our clients, and we learn how their bodies react to each adjustment we make. But this is something I've learned for myself through all this time that I've spent and experience I've had tracking my food, being consistent with that, and monitoring how my body changes. So with that, I know that I can eat around between like 3,000 and 3,200 calories per day and maintain my weight. That is my, what I would call calorie maintenance. So that's how many calories I can eat while not gaining or losing anything, but just kind of maintaining. So I know if I'm on this trip and I want to maintain my weight, I know I probably have to be around 3,000-ish calories per day. So being conscious of that, or knowing that information, gives me some information, I guess, to work with. So there's this rule that I have with rule or guideline, whatever you want to call it, that I have when it comes to eating dinners out at restaurants. And that is, if I'm going to eat a meal at a restaurant and I'm going to eat the entire thing, it is going to, on average, probably be around 1,000 calories. Now, this could be higher. Like if I'm getting a burger and fries, something maybe greasier, could be up to like 1,200, especially if I have like a little bit of an appetizer or some dessert with it. Could be even up to like 1,500. And then it could be a little bit lower than this 1,000 calorie rule too. It could be if I'm having something lighter, maybe I'm having like salmon and rice and vegetables, or I'm having like a chicken breast with rice and vegetables. That's probably a little bit lighter and maybe around 700 calories for the whole entire thing when I go to a restaurant. But I know on average, it's probably going to be 1,000. And if I end up having dessert, appetizers, it's probably going to creep up to around 1,500 calories for that meal. If I have something lighter and I don't have an appetizer or dessert, it's probably going to be closer to around 600 or 700. So because I kind of relatively know that from, my knowledge and experience of tracking, I know if I'm going to have dessert and an appetizer, it's going to be about 1,500 calories. So knowing that I maintain, let's say I'm 3,000, I know that if I'm going to have just 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and my dinner is going to be heavier and probably around 1,000 to 1,500, maybe let's round up to 1,500 just to be on the safe side. I know 3,000 minus the 1,500 calories for dinner leaves me with 1,500 calories left for breakfast and lunch. So knowing that, I can just briefly glance at the nutrition label of some of these things we bought at the grocery store when I'm putting together my breakfast and lunch and be like, okay, is this around 750 calories each, right? Because if I have 1,500 calories left for breakfast and lunch, divide that by 2, that's around 700 to 750 calories I have left for each of those meals. So now when I'm like putting my meals together, I don't have to open up my MyFitnessPal. I don't have to log it. I don't have to be so meticulous about tracking. I just have to briefly glance at the food labels and be like, okay, this muffin's around 350 calories. This protein bar is around 200. This banana is around 100. Add it all up, it's going to be about 600, 650. I'm close to that 700 mark. That's my breakfast. Like, that's kind of how I approached my day-to-day, my breakfast and lunch. So like there was a breakfast that I had multiple times where we got these big muffins from Sam's Club. They're big like blueberry muffins from Sam's Club. There were like chocolate chip ones too, and I think we got like banana ones. I'm not really a huge fan of banana muffins, so we didn't really eat those that much, but those muffins are enormous. They're almost like the size of your head, and I think they're around 600 calories each. So on days that I had that muffin, I had a protein bar that was around 100 calories, maybe 150 with it, and just briefly glancing at the food label, right? Like I said, I'm not pulling out my MyFitnessPal. I'm not being meticulous about weighing and measuring things. I'm just seeing, okay, this is 600, this is 150, roughly 750. That's my breakfast. And then the same thing for lunch, right? Like I had routinely a buffalo chicken, like shredded deli meat chicken sandwich with those like little cups of Pringles that you can get. You can get like the big can of Pringles, but you can also get those little like carrier snack size containers. Pretty much every single lunch I had buffalo chicken sandwich with like the buffalo chicken deli meat with 2 slices of provolone cheese and then one of those cups of Pringles. And then sometimes I'd even have like a protein bar with that. So like with the bread, briefly glance, 2 slices of bread was around 150. The meat was probably putting around 150 to 200 calories of meat on there, brings the calories up to let's say 350. Have 2 slices of the provolone cheese, that's about 100 calories. Then we're at 450. Have the Pringles, that's around 100 calories, 650. And then I have about like 100 calories left that maybe I had with the extra protein bar. So these were things I just briefly glanced at the nutrition labels, didn't log things, didn't manually kind of sit down and calculate it out. But just in my head, I just approximated, okay, this is around 700. And then that way I kind of kept things a little bit in check that way. So like, you can be conscious of your calorie intake when you're on vacation without meticulously logging it. And that way you just have an idea of where you're going to end up at the end of the day, probably. And as long as you get close to maintenance, you're probably going to be at maintenance. So this is also another kind of mistake people make, or a misconception that they have, is they think our maintenance calories are like a certain number. Like your maintenance calories are 2,000 or my maintenance calories are 3,000, but really it's more of a range, right? Like I said, my range is probably between 3,000 to 3,200, and actually is probably even a bigger range than that. It's probably like 29 to 3,300. So as long as I fall within that range, approximately, I'm going to maintain my weight while I'm gone. And same thing for you. Like your maintenance might be 2,000, but if you eat anywhere from 1,800 to 2,200, you're probably going to maintain your weight. So by being conscious of your calorie intake, using that like 1,000 calorie dinner rule and adding in a little bit extra in your head, or subtracting a little bit extra in your head based off of those scenarios I mentioned, you can approximate like how much you have left for breakfast and lunch, and then just in your head kind of mentally just quickly add things up and be like, is this close to this or not? And then go about your way. So that was a really good way for me to stay close to my calorie goal without actually pulling out my MyFitnessPal, having to weigh and measure things, and having to be so meticulous about it. So that was tip number 3. Tip number 4 is making sure you include protein at each meal. So I made sure no matter what I had, I was going to have protein at every single meal. So like I said, with the muffins, I always paired a protein bar with it. And then with obviously lunch, I had a sandwich with, you're going to get protein from your cheese. You're going to get protein from the deli meat you're putting on there. And then dinner, I always got some kind of dinner where protein was like the base. So that could have been steak. It could have been a burger. It could have been, trying to think of what else I got. We got fish. So I got salmon the one day. So just having some kind of protein at each meal will help you to stay full between meals. Because like I mentioned, really try to keep snacks minimal and stick with that breakfast, lunch, those 2 meals being light, and then dinner being a little bit heavier if you want, or more flexibility. In order to stick with that concept of just having the 3 meals, you have to make sure each meal is relatively balanced at least, and especially make sure that each meal has protein. Or like for that breakfast, if I was just going to have that muffin that was like 600 calories and not have that protein bar, I probably would be getting hungry within another hour or two, just because that muffin was just calories or just carbs and fat. Didn't really have a lot of protein in there. Protein really helps to slow down digestion, helps us to really feel full. So including that protein bar, even though it's just 100 extra calories possibly, it really helps me to stay full, or helps you to stay full for those next, 4 hours or so until lunch comes up. And making sure, your lunch, you have some kind of protein in there that helps you stay full until dinner. And if you're thinking about relative grams of protein per meal, this is going to vary depending on person to person. But I will say, like, at minimum, try to just briefly glance at the nutrition label when you're putting together your breakfast and lunch, kind of like I talked about when I was kind of mentally adding up the calories very quickly. Try to have at least minimum 25, if you can do more, grams of protein at each of those meals. And like I said, doesn't have to be something you pull out MyFitnessPal and log and manually calculate. You're on vacation, you're trying to have more flexibility, you're trying not to be so meticulous about things, but just briefly taking the extra 5 to 10 seconds to briefly flip over the package of food you're eating, look at the nutrition label, see the grams of protein on there, can help you to make sure you at least hit that kind of 25 gram mark at each meal, or get as close as you can, which is going to help you to feel more full for the next meal. So that's the 4th tip. The 5th tip that really set myself up for success on this vacation is I don't restrict myself in everyday life. And I think that is a huge piece to all of this. Is every single day, if I want to have a certain food item and I can fit it within my calorie goal, I have it. If I want to, on a given weekend, if I want to go to Chipotle, or if I want to go to this restaurant, if I want to go to this, I do those things. Now, if I'm going to fall out of my calorie range and not hit my protein goal because I'm doing those things too often, if I have certain goals, I have to have some level of restraint, right? I can't just be willy-nilly with everything and eat whatever I want, whenever I want, in as many as, or in as big of a quantity as I want, or else I'll never reach my goal that I have. But as far as the actual food choices I make, I have the flexibility. If on this day, this dinner, I don't want to have chicken, but I want to have a ground beef burger instead, I have that. If I want to, on a random Thursday, if I want to plan to have Chipotle for dinner, I'll plan ahead, make sure my breakfast and lunch add up to those remaining calories so I can fit that Chipotle in and still hit my totals at the end of the day and satisfy that craving or that want on that day. So I never go into a vacation where I'm like, oh, I'm on vacation, I'm usually have all these foods that are off limits, and now they're on limits now they're open to me. Now I'm going to eat as many of them as possible because I never can eat them when I'm at home. Like, I never feel that way because I make sure that I, approach my nutrition in a way where I can fit those things in. So I think that is kind of like the big key piece of this, is that vacation should be a time where you can really unplug from like work. You can unplug from different stresses in your day-to-day life. A vacation is a time to spend good quality time with your friends, your family, really embrace that time with them. It's not a time that should be where, okay, my food rules are all off now, and now I have, all these foods that are available to me that I'm allowing myself with, because they should be allowed in certain quantities in certain circumstances in your day-to-day life anyway. So it shouldn't be your food rules that you get a break from when you go on vacation, because you shouldn't have that rigid of food rules to begin with. Now, we have to have some kind of structure, or we're never going to reach our goal, or we're going to maybe gain weight and continuously gain weight, right? We have to have some kind of guidelines that we follow, but they shouldn't be so strict where now, like, I can't have a cookie when I'm at home in my normal day routine, but on vacation, I can have 20 cookies in a day, right? That big extreme gap is what sets a lot of people up for failure, and it's probably setting you up for failure if you find yourself always gaining a ton of weight every vacation. You're probably doing that in response to restricting yourself physically or mentally from too many foods beforehand. So those are kind of my 5 tips, just to recap, on ways that you can make sure that you maintain your weight while on vacation. Daily movement every single day. If you can track your steps and get as close to 8,000 to 10,000 as you can, that's going to be super helpful. Number 2, keep your breakfast and lunch light with minimal snacks in between, if any at all. And then have more flexibility for dinner, since that's the meal you're probably going to want the flexibility with more, since you're probably going to have that meal most often together with your family, where you're going to be going out somewhere. Tip number 3 is maybe don't track your calories, but be a little conscious of them. Like, use that 1,000-calorie dinner rule, give or take a couple hundred, depending on how much, if you plan to have an appetizer and dessert or not. But use that 1,000-calorie rule to kind of backtrack and think, okay, how many calories do I have left for breakfast and lunch? How many does that equal then per meal? And then let me just consciously kind of look at the calorie content, really quickly estimate things. That way I could probably get kind of close to that large calorie maintenance range that I have. Tip number 4, protein at each meal, aim for at least 25 grams minimum, more if you can. And then tip number 5 is just make sure you are not restricting your calories, or not restricting calories, but not restricting your food choices too much in your everyday life. Some level of structure and restraint is needed sometimes, just to make sure we progress and make sure we don't overdo it and gain weight. But there shouldn't be these huge extremes of, okay, I can never have these foods in my normal daily life, and then these foods are completely on limits and unlimited quantities when I'm on vacation. That extreme back and forth is probably what's causing you to overdo it when you're on your trips too. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you found it helpful in the comments below. Feel super excited. I actually am starting a fat loss phase now. Feeling super motivated. I spent a little bit of time in maintenance for the past month or two. But have some cool goals that I'm looking for as far as body composition before my 30th birthday coming up in a few months. So that'll be fun. So hopefully this was helpful. Definitely share this if you did. Appreciate you all, and I will see you guys in the next one.